Time to make another guide video. Let's see, which one are we doing this time? R4D1? Really? Isn't that just another reactor level? The one that's super easy to funnel enemies and only has 4 codes to it? The one that doesn't even have an active extraction scan. There are no shadows in this one either. Do I really need to make a guide for this one? I feel like that this is a pretty simple level that I could just finish in maybe a 10-15 minute video. Like, do I really need to talk about this? There's a new enemy in this level. There's a room that can have anywhere between 5 to 8 scouts in it. What? And you're telling me that there are 3 birthers in this stage that all automatically get set off upon opening the zone that they're located in? Well, let me go grab my notes then. Hello everybody, my name is Professor Scalar and welcome to the R4D1 guide. Finally, I'm getting around to doing a D tier stage. Probably took me longer than it should have, but hey, here we are, better late than never. With this level, there's a lot of general stuff I could talk about for the entire stage as a whole, but not a whole lot about very specific zones. So for that reason, I want to take a few extra minutes to talk about the loadout, just because I feel like your loadout is going to be a lot or very important in this stage, probably a bit more so than it has been in previous levels where you could just sort of take whatever you want and it works. You're going to be fighting a lot of enemies, and I mean a lot of enemies. And there are going to be many strikers, shooters, big strikers, hybrids, chargers, big chargers, some scouts, some hybrids, you name it. It might be in this level. But there's a lot you have to fight, and they're going to be in very large numbers too. For this reason, you want to make sure your team is well balanced with what type of weapons you have. For your main weapon, I would recommend guns that are good at dealing with a lot of enemies, either good magazine size or pierce effect or just staggering effects. And the guns that first come to my mind with that qualifications are the assault rifle, the auto pistol, the Hell revolver, and the heavy assault rifle. The Hell revolver is good because of the pierce effect. You're gonna have a lot of enemies coming after you on a small little catwalk. Very easy to just shred through them with this gun by piercing through and hitting multiple enemies with one bullet. The auto pistol is really good because of the fact that it has 50 rounds in the magazine and staggers like nobody's business with the tungsten rounds, making it very easy to spray and pray and keep enemies in position while your teammates just finish them off for you. The heavy assault rifle is sort of similar. It does pretty good damage, it's a slow rate of fire but 25 rounds in the magazine, and if you hit an enemy in the head, you have a good chance of killing it if it's already damaged, and if you don't, you stagger it and make it easier for your team to kill it before it attacks you back. And then finally, the assault rifle, 30 rounds in the magazine, pretty good damage, especially to the head. Quick reload, very easy to just shoot one enemy that's already about to die and then start shooting another one without wasting ammunition. It's a pretty good standard gun for this job. For your secondary weapon, I would recommend 2 people take long range weapons and 2 people take close range weapons. The long range weapon people will probably be taking burst cannons. The thing is, you're meant to be the tank killer, and while a sniper is a good tank killer, it's not very good on ammo, and while the revolver is better on ammo, it's not very good as a tank killer. Burst cannon will very easily deal with the big strikers, big chargers, and hybrids before they can get too close to you or get within line of sight and actually start firing you down and damaging you. And if you're quick with your little wrist flicks, you can also deal with quite a few small enemies with the burst cannon as well. As for the other 2 people, I would recommend a shotgun, combat shotgun, or machine gun. Machine gun does have quite a bit of recoil, so it can be hard to control it at medium range. But if enemies are really close to you, you could very easily just pelt into them with this thing and just shred through them, especially if you're actually good at controlling the recoil. Combat shotgun and shotgun are both pretty good as well. They're shotguns, what can I say? Combat shotgun has quite a bit of flinch to it, which also makes it quite nice. I would not recommend the choke mod shotgun, however, due to the fact that that thing only has 4 shots before you have to reload. Now, what about your tools though? What should you take? Is there an absolute best loadout? No. Almost every single tool is super viable in this level, and there is a lot of different loadouts you can take. So I'm going to explain why each tool is good or bad, and where you could probably use it, and then I'll give you some recommended loadouts towards the end. First of all, the bio tracker is a must-have. This level is going to have a lot of different zones, and you have to get through them quickly to get the codes before the reactor resets. Being able to know how many enemies are in one room or how many enemies are in a different room that you can take is very nice. If you set off enemies, being able to ping them all is very useful. Lights are going to be flickering on and off quite a bit because of the reactor, so being able to see in some zones that might be a little bit harder to see because of that, or the zones are pitch black, again, biotracker is super useful. Probably one of the bigger uses though is when you finish a wave and the timer hits 0 and tells you, okay, go to this zone, find this new terminal, yada yada, then you need to run, you need to book it, you need to get moving. But enemies might still spawn in. There might be a final wave that spawns in that only has a few enemies, or maybe there's some stragglers. You don't want to wait until they arrive to you, then move forward from your holding out position. You want to move quickly, and then when you see, oh hey, 7 chargers approaching us from the reactor room, can't see it because the room is so dark because the lights are off. Biotracker, ping, shoot the targets. It's a really good tool to take, and I highly recommend it no matter what. On the other hand though, C-foam is basically the opposite. Now I know some of you are already pausing the video and typing in the comments saying, C-foam's necessary, what are you talking about? It is. C-foam is required. C-foam launcher, not so much. This level will hand out C-foam grenades like candy. I on average get 5 per run. Sometimes I get 3 or 4. Sometimes I get 6 or 7. And you really only need 5. 3 to easily deal with all 3 of the birthers you have to do in the exchange objective, and 2 to make the alarm door for the 4th code much easier on yourself. And that's pretty easy to achieve. Even if you only get 4 C-foam grenades, you can still easily deal with everything. If you get 3, I still say you could deal with everything pretty easily with minimal difficulties. You really don't need a C-foam launcher. It's much better to replace it with a mine deployer or another sentry. Speaking of the mine deployer, this is a pretty useful tool. You will usually find a few deployable mines on the level, so you can get away without the mine deployer, but it could be nice to use in case you have bad luck or you don't want to just rely on luck. The mine deployer can be helpful for the blood door you have to deal with, the alarm door you have to deal with, and if you walk into a room, you see about 30 enemies and you think, alright, let's just pull it, shoot, run out, shut the door, place a mine, boom. Makes it quite a bit easier. Or, if you want to have a bit more firepower for the big enemies during the reactor waves, place those mines up high so only big strikers and hybrids will touch it with their head, and then it'll blow up and do pretty decent damage to them and not the small fry that come through. So, mine deploy can be pretty useful, but I wouldn't call it a necessity. Then when it comes to the sentries, every sentry has its own purpose. If you have an auto sentry, you could place it down in front of you on the catwalk to stagger enemies that are getting really close to you and make it harder for them to actually reach you and attack you before you can shoot back and kill them. Burst sentry is pretty good damage. If you place it behind the enemies to shoot them, make sure you angle it so it's not going to hit you by accident, but if you have that there, it can easily chew through enemies pretty quickly as they try to rush you. And the sniper sentry, you have very long catwalks and bridges that enemies have to come across. Sniper sentries can do a very good job at taking out a lot of those enemies, and it will chew through big enemies very easily, making your job a bit easier to deal with. So what are my recommended loadouts? Well, the first one is a little bit of a meme, but it actually does work quite nicely. It would be a biotracker and 3 sniper sentries. Now, this loadout is pure raw firepower and damage. Besides a biotracker, you're not going to have the staggering effect of the auto sentry, the reliable burst speed of the burst sentry, or mines to deal with, the mine sections. But the sniper sentries are going to make defending against the waves much easier. If you do this loadout, I recommend 1 sniper sentry in front of you facing towards the reactor, 1 of them at the top of the bridge facing towards the reactor room so it shoots enemies that come from that direction, and 1 of them facing towards the stairs to the left of you. That way enemies who come from your spawn point can get shot at. This is also useful because if the hybrids come up, they're not going to come all the way to be in line of sight of the sentry in front of you, so that other sentry can deal with them, and you don't have to worry too much about them. Another loadout that might be a little bit safer and to your liking is a biotracker, a sniper sentry, an auto sentry, and a mine deployer. Mine deployer, as I mentioned earlier, has its purposes. The auto sentry you can place down right in front of you, that way it will take care of enemies who get too close. And the sniper sentry can be positioned across the bridge, that way it shoots enemies who are trying to approach you from the reactor room. And then finally, the third recommended loadout could be a biotracker, a mine deployer, and then either a burst and auto sentry or 2 auto sentries. If you do this, I would recommend that the burst or the second auto sentry be positioned towards you at an angle so it doesn't shoot you as much, but it will shoot enemies from behind who try to come after you. Burst more for damage, auto more for the stagger. However, if you do any combination and you do not have a sniper sentry, make sure whoever has the burst cannons or a sniper rifle if you brought it are dealing with the big enemies ASAP. You do not want burst sentries and auto sentries wasting pretty much all their ammo trying to kill them, because they will go through a ton of ammo, but really any combination of those will work. You probably could also go with double burst sentry or maybe even triple auto sentry. Just make sure that you are positioning whatever tool you have in a position where it's going to help you and not hinder you. The objective for this level is to find the reactor in zone 62 and restart it, and you start off in zone 60, so not too far away. Inside of zone 60, the only thing I really need to mention is yes, the extreme bulkhead door and the bulkhead door control are in here, but you cannot do anything with them until you finish the main objective. There's a warden door that leads to zone 61, but there's also 3 very important doors in this zone. On the map here, you can see these 2 doors. Leave these shut. Make sure that these are closed when you start the reactor sequence, and make sure this door over here stays open. You're going to be defending in this room on the catwalk, and when you do that, enemies are going to spawn from the reactor zone or a little bit further back behind it, or they're going to spawn in your spawn point. And you don't want them coming up from behind you. If you keep those 2 doors shut and the 1 door open, they will go through the open door, climb up the stairs, and go down or come towards you from the same direction that the enemies from the reactor room are going to be coming from, making it so that you can focus all of your turrets and stuff in one direction, and you don't have to worry about enemies coming from behind you or below you. This will make things quite a bit easier to defend. Zone 61 will have no enemies in it, it's just a long bridge with a few resources, and Zone 62 has a full team scan that you have to go through to get to it, and it will have quite a few enemies or some hybrids in there, but nothing too difficult. Once you've collected a bunch of resources from all these zones and you looted up and you're ready to go back to Zone 60 and prepare your turrets and your mines if you do want to place down some mines, and get everything set and organized because you only have 30 seconds before the first wave spawns in once you do reactor startup and you do that full team scan. Now let's talk about each reactor wave and what type of enemies you should expect before we talk about the codes and how to get into them in the zones they're part of. The first wave of enemies is going to only consist of strikers, shooters, big strikers, and hybrids, and for the most part you're just going to get the strikers and shooters. The hybrids and big strikers will show up about halfway through it, and there won't be a ton per wave, but there will be a few added in there. The second and third wave are going to get a bit harder as you're going to see more big strikers and hybrids, and chargers are also going to be thrown into the mix. Just like before though, the chargers don't really appear until the last few minute and a half, but they will be coming in large abundance, especially on the third wave where the ending bit of it is basically nothing but chargers for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes. So do be a bit cautious of them since it is easier for them to sort of sneak up on you because of the darkness of the level. The fourth wave though has a brand new enemy to this game, which is the big charger. When it comes to a big charger, think of a big striker and a charger got together, had a baby, and that baby had the best of both genes and is a child prodigy. This thing is a nasty creature to fight if you're unprepared. It has the charge speed and the attack speed of a charger, both with its fist and with its tongue attack, but it has the strength and resilience of a big striker. A ton of HP, it has no crit spot on the head, so you don't get bonus damage for hitting it there, and this thing has 40% damage per melee punch and 24% attack or 24% damage per tongue attack. This makes it so that it gets right on top of you and it hits you with its 3-hit combo, you're guaranteed dead no matter what. This is something you do not want letting get close to you. So when they start appearing towards the last minute and a half of the fourth wave, you need to make sure that you are just shooting it with whatever you can. Burst cannons and sniper rifles, you need to pull those things out. If you got staggering weapons, stagger them and keep them away from you. Do not let these things get on top of you. But those are pretty much the only type of enemies that you're going to see. You're not going to see any shadows or any big shooters or birthers. Nothing like that during any of these waves. Those are the only enemies that you have to expect. Now that we've talked about each individual wave and what type of enemies to expect, let's talk about the level as a whole, what you should be doing the entire time you're playing through, the codes for the terminal, and just where you can find everything and what to expect. First of all, when you're going through these zones, pick up every single C-foam grenade and deployable mine that you find, prioritizing the C-foam grenades above all else, especially if you have a mine deployer. You are going to want as many mines as you can for the second code, and you're going to want bare minimum 2 C-foam grenades for the third code. So make sure you at least have those when you're going through. You can't pick up a long-range flashlight or some lock melters, but if you have C-foam grenades, pick those up first, top priority. The first code is going to be found to the north of the reactor zone, and you're going to have to go through 63 and zone 64 to get to it. Zone 63 is just a long corridor room that might have a lot of enemies, might have only a few, and can have a lot of resources in it. I recommend don't pick up too many of the resources in Zone 63. If you have to get a lot of resources, like if you go get the third code but you didn't have time to loot that zone properly before you had to get back because you still have too many enemies, having a zone that close, aka 63, where you can just go in, grab resources really quick and get back out before the wave spawns in from the reactor, is pretty good. If you leave them all in 64 though, then you have to go even further back to get them. So try to leave these resources be if can, and try to get as much as you can from 64, and then take stuff from 63 to fill up whatever you couldn't get from 64. Zone 64 will have a lot of enemies in it, and I do mean a lot. You cannot really afford to set off these rooms unless if you mean to and you're all ready to fall back and shoot together. Not you're in the middle of it and you accidentally do it. Here is a map overlay of what the zone looks like. As you can see, both of the terminals are in the back room. You can either head to the left or to the right to try to get there. The left will lead you through a bigger, more open room which will most likely have a lot of enemies in it, while the right path tends to have fewer enemies and is a bit safer to go through. That back central room though tends to have quite a few enemies in it, so try to get through as fast as you can. If you need to, pull the very first room if there's a ton in there, just because that is the first central room, but just go through as fast as you can, collect resources, get the code. Once you have it and you're done, head back to the reactor terminal, put it in, and you can deal with the second wave of enemies. The second code can be found to the west of the reactor room. This will be in Zone 66, but first you have to go through Zone 65. 65 will be a long bridge room, just like earlier. However, there will always be 2 scouts on it and nothing else, so you're going to have to deal with them as fast as you can. Don't spend too much time on these guys, you don't have the time for it. This bridge doesn't have too much to hide behind either, which can maybe make it a little bit harder for some of you to kill the scouts. However, the big kicker is the fact that the door to get to Zone 66 is a blood door, and this one has quite a few hybrids and other enemies behind it. My best recommendation is just either have your sentries facing towards the door or facing away from it so it shoots them from behind when they come out. Place some mines on it. This is what you want mines for, especially if you don't have a mine deployer. This is where the deployable mines will come in handy. And I would recommend once you do the full team scan, run away from the door, have one person open it, and get behind cover on the bridge. There isn't much of it, but very little is better than nothing, and it'll help you keep safe from the hybrids that are going to try to rapid fire you and turn you into Swiss cheese. Once you get into Zone 67, there's quite a bit you can go. Here is the floor layout for it. You may notice that it doesn't really matter which way you go. Even if you go towards the south and go through those side rooms, you have to reconnect to the main central room anyway, so you might as well just head straight and go through it. This zone once again can have quite a lot of enemies, but you also can sneak through this one a bit easier if you want to, just because of how wide open these rooms are. In the back though, you may notice that there is an alarm door and the 2 terminals that you need. That alarm door is where you need to go to for your 4th code. So both of the doors connected to that room, you want to leave open. That way there is no chance whatsoever that those doors get broken down. You're going to want to preserve them for the alarm. Get the code, get back, prepare, then you're on to the 3rd wave of enemies. The 3rd code can be found south of the reactor room inside Zone 69. You're going to have to go through Zone 68 first. Zone 68 isn't too big of a room. It is quite foggy and it will have chargers in it and is a bit dark, but it will have a lot of resources in it. Sort of just like earlier though, try not to grab too many from here and grab most of your resources from 69 if you can manage it. The door to 69 is just a basic security door, and it is pitch black. You're going to have a lot of regular enemies, quite a few chargers in here, and you won't be able to see anything. Long range flashlight can come in handy in the zone if you want to bring one. If not, then the biotracker will be very useful as well. Here is the map layout for this zone. As you can see, both of the terminals are down towards the south a bit more. And there is an easy way to sneak through. You can either go through the main central room that you first enter into, or you can head to the east, go through that door, and go through the corridor. There are usually a lot fewer enemies in there, and it's not quite as deadly. Then connect down into the big open room down below, kill a few chargers, and get to the one or the terminal that you need. Other than just the chargers and the pitch black darkness of the zone, this one's not too deadly to deal with, so once you get the code, you can head back, put it into the reactor terminal, and now you can get to work on the 4th wave of enemies. And finally, for the 4th code, you're going to be heading back to the west again all the way through Zone 66 to get to the very back end of it where the security door is that leads to Zone 67. This door is a Class 4 alarm, and this one's going to take a little bit longer than normal because the full team scan doesn't appear next to the door and actually does move a bit. However, this alarm door isn't too bad. If both doors are preserved, just make sure both of them are shut, and that will make it so the enemies only come from the northernmost door. That way you could just place your sentries outside of it, C-foam the door right off the bat, and then you could just use one C-foam grenade to re-C-foam it about halfway through. 2 C-foam grenades is usually enough to make it so that no enemies are in until the last wave of scans, in which case you can let the door break down and you can easily deal with them. If you have a mine left, go on ahead and use it. Once you finish the alarm door and every enemy is killed, you can head into Zone 67 and you can face your doom, because this is usually where runs come to an end. In this zone, you're going to have a lot of chargers, a few big strikers and shooters, and anywhere from 5 to 8 scouts. And this can be very nasty because it's all one room, no sound barriers. If a single enemy screams, everything is getting set off. My recommendation is one person should go back to the reactor terminal back in Zone 62 and get ready to put the code in. That way you could take a little bit more time trying to get through here, and when you do get the code, you can tell it to your team and they can immediately put it in to make sure that another wave does not spawn from the reactor because you run out of time. As you can see with the map overlay, there are 3 terminals in this zone. These 2 in particular are down below in the far back of the room, while the other one is up above on the catwalks, which is quite a bit safer to get to. Most of the enemies are going to spawn down below, and this will also make it so the scouts decide to path down below on the ground floor and you don't have to worry about them too much, assuming the top terminal is the correct one. The 3 people who are staying should make their way towards that terminal and use it to see if it's the right one. If it's the right one, beautiful. Get the code, give it to your teammate, they put it in, you can take your time getting out. If it is not the correct one though, use it to ping the correct one and see which one of the 2 down below it is. Then just follow that catwalk up against the back end of the zone, then take the stairs down and the ramps down to get down to the ground floor without having to take fall damage. Kill enemies along the way and try to be quick, but don't be too hasty. Now, if something goes wrong, if a scout touches you or a charger detects you that you didn't notice and it does end up screaming and the room gets set off, I highly recommend run to the terminal that is the correct one. Hopefully you know which one it is by this point. One person get on it and the other 2 people defend that person against the chargers and big strikers that might rush you. Keep them off long enough so the person can get the code and relay it to their teammate. Then the teammate can put it into the reactor and you don't have to worry about a wave. Then the 3 people in there can hold off until they kill all the chargers, since those are harder to kite. Once they're dead, they can make a book for and get out of this zone. Run all the way back to the very beginning to where you normally defend against reactor waves and set up there, because you're going to have a lot of enemies. Worst case scenario, you get all 8 scouts set off, every single one of them is going to spawn about 10 to 15 enemies. So you're looking at about 100 enemies you're going to have to kill over time. This is basically wave 5 if you get really unlucky. But if you move quickly, you coordinate with your team and you group up, you should be able to handle this if you do accidentally set off the entire area. Once that's done, once you've either gotten the code and gone out safely, you're done with the main objective. Once you put that 4th code in, the full team scan at the end appears. So if you're actually at one of the bomb terminals and you don't think you can get out safely, your solo person can go to that extraction scan and get on it and just finish it. And the 3 of you can just stay in Zone 67. But of course, if you want to do the extreme objective, then that's not the case because there's quite a bit more we now need to do. So you want to do the extreme objective and not just the main objective, huh? Well, there's quite a bit of preparation you need to do first before you even step foot through that bulkhead door. First of all, you're going to need resources and quite a few of them. Go back through every single zone, check every box and locker, and make sure you have every resource that's still in the level. Don't just use a terminal to list a zone and see if there's anything in there. Because if you had a 3-use medkit and you dropped it off to pick up a 4-use, that 3-use doesn't appear on a terminal anymore. So you can't just list the zones and just say, yep, nothing left, we have all we have. Go back through and check. Also, you're going to want to grab every single C-foam grenade and fog repeller that you can get, and those don't appear on the terminals. You have 3 birthers you're going to have to deal with throughout all the extreme objective zones, so 3 C-foam grenades is going to help out quite a lot, and so will the fog repellers to disperse the fog. Once you've collected every single resource that's left and you have the bulkhead key, which will always be located inside of Zone 67, and you are ready to go, you can then head towards the door control, put that in, do that scan, but then before you go into the bulkhead door, get on the extraction scan and get it up to about 80 or 85%. This extraction scan doesn't have an alarm on it, so you can get it up pretty high. That way, if something goes wrong and the birthers take down 3 of your teammates and you're still alive, you can book it for the extraction scan and get on it and still get out of the level safely. Getting a completion is better than getting no completion whatsoever. Once all that is done though, you can head into Zone 368. There is no alarm on that bulkhead door. Zone 368 doesn't have a ton of resources in it or really anything of much. You have a few enemies, maybe one resource pack, but that's about it. There is a security door that leads to Zone 369 at the end of it, and it looks like just a basic security door. It just says do a full team scan, that's it, no alarm. However, you don't want to open up this door. This is a special type of security door that I have named the Screech door, because when you open it and the opening animation finishes, a loud screech will be let out and it will wake up every single enemy in Zone 369. Inside of there are going to be a lot of giant enemies as well as a birther. So that birther is automatically getting woken up, and it's really far into the room too, so you can't just rush in there and C-foam it before it moves. There are many different ways you can handle this. You can either try to fight inside Zone 368, or you can bait it out all the way back to the reactor zones and go really far away. If you fight in 368 like my group did here, you could position your turrets facing towards the security door to shoot the enemies as they try to come out, as well as the birther for when she finally approaches. And then you can either try to hide around a corner and then C-foam grenade her when she comes around the corner, or you can fall back, make her birth, kill off all the children, and then rush her with fog repellers and a C-foam grenade before she births again. The thing is, that has a cooldown. She can't birth as often as she wants, and also she can only birth if she is either in really close proximity to you or she has direct line of sight on you. So if you're hiding behind boxes and stuff and she can't see you, she will not birth, which makes it pretty easy to hide around a corner, have her come near you, and then C-foam her when she comes around the corner. There's also this little cheese spot that you can see us using. If things get really hectic, you can jump down on there. Enemies can't really hit you there, so it's a pretty safe spot, and if you do die up there, you can easily revive your teammates. So worst case scenario, you can use this. If you'd rather not fight her in here though, you can run back to a previous room. If you go all the way back to a previous zone and you get into a room that has only one entrance or two entrances, but they are completely shut off with doors, you can hide behind them and then just wait. It's going to take a long time for her to finally get to you, but eventually she will come. And when she's close to the door or on the other side of it, you can open that door and then just throw a C-foam grenade at her immediately. She might still birth during the door opening animation or because she's really close to you when you're opening it, but you will be able to C-foam her pretty easily, so this is another legitimate strategy. Once you've dealt with her though, you can go into 369, collect a few more resources, and then you'll find another security door at the end that leads to Zone 370, and inside there'll be even more enemies and 2 birthers. You need to get in there because the terminal you need to do that backdoor command will always be located inside of Zone 370. However, even though there are 2 birthers in there, it's not too bad to deal with this. Assuming there are no enemies next to that first birther on the ground floor, you can just rush in and C-foam grenade her immediately. The first birther will always be on the same level as the door is, and the other one will be on a catwalk above the first one, so even if she does see you and give birth, the babies have to run down the catwalk to get to you. And enemies in the room as well will have to come up to you if they're not already up on top of that main floor. The way I would recommend doing this is having your turrets positioned just like the last time, facing towards the door, that way it shoots enemies as they come through the security door as they try to come up the staircase to you. You just keep jumping and crouch spamming, that way when the door opens you can jump through it before the opening animation finishes and the screech goes off. Throw a C-foam grenade, hit the birther with it, unload your guns into her, kill her, and then retreat as fast as you can. The birther above you will give birth just because it is a catwalk. She can see you as you approach and you'll be really close to her. So you're going to need to run and then deal with the children as they come after you, as well as all the other enemies that will be coming after the zone for you. You can see my group using this little spot here to our advantage. This is a nice spot because you can hide behind a corner, you can force the birther to come to you, and then when she finally comes up the stairs, jump on top of it, hit her with another C-foam grenade, or if you don't have one, you can just jump up there and start shooting her, throw a fog repeller to get rid of the fog, and then you can try to kill her before she runs away from you. The other nice thing is, on top of here, the babies can't hit you very easily. They can damage you, but only if they climb up on top of it a little bit, so most of them can't hit you. It'll make it easier to deal with them without all of you just getting wiped and killed. Once you have killed both birthers, you can then walk in, go to the terminal, and put in the backdoor command. This terminal will not cause any type of alarm to go off, no waves of enemies whatsoever. Put the code in, do a full team scan, and then you could go back to the spawn point, get on that extraction scan, and you can finish this level once and for all. And there you have it, pretty much everything you need to know about R4D1 and how to beat it both on the main and the extreme objective. I realized that there was quite a bit to talk about, and I definitely spent a lot of time talking about some subjects that maybe you thought I could shorten down a bit, but I'd rather spend an extra 5 or even maybe 10 minutes making sure I talk about all the stuff that really needs to be talked about and that will help people who are struggling with these levels, rather than just summarizing stuff and simplifying it just to make it go by a bit faster. After all, this is a D tier stage, so I figure a 30+ minute video talking about it really isn't that unwarranted. But as always, if you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or just have something in general that you want to say, leave it down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, then consider hitting that like button. It really does help out the channel, and it helps these videos get noticed by people who really need them. And if you want to become part of the community that I'm building, hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. Until next time, keep on bonking, beware them big boys, and I'll see you all in the next video.